This is the Sisters in Therapy podcast. I'm Dr. Mercedes, licensed marriage and family therapy supervisor.
I am Dr. Brittany Harrell, licensed professional counselor.
I am Dr. TK, licensed marriage and family therapy supervisor.
We are inviting you to be a part of our thoughtful, mind-shifting, mental health-related conversations that we have all the time amongst ourselves.
This podcast is not meant to replace your relationship with a licensed therapist. Now, let's get into the session.
Welcome to the Sisters in Therapy podcast. We're back with another session. This week we're talking about compassion fatigue. And my phone has one. So I'm going to start with the definition of burnout. And Takesha's going to introduce a more in-depth way to describe burnout. Burnout is the state of chronic physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion resulting from prolonged stress in caregiving or therapeutic roles. It manifests as fatigue, detachment, and a diminished self of accomplishment, often leading to decreased effectiveness and well-being.
Okay, so go ahead.
I was going to say, now, why did it just limit the roles to caregiving or therapeutic roles? Is that the
When it came to
burnout?
I think probably because the way that I just looked up
Oh, okay. Okay.
what it was in specific to caregivers and therapists, because that's really what I wanted to talk about today.
Gotcha.
Is how burnout and compassion fatigue specifically impact therapists and people who care for other people.
Okay, got it. Yes.
So does that feel different for you guys at all? Like, how would you describe just maybe traditional burnout or signs and symptoms of burnout versus, even in your clients or in yourself, what people traditionally talk about as burnout versus like the compassion fatigue?
You know, I don't even think people use those words when they come in and start talking about, burnout. But they are typically describing burnout, but they're typically saying, I don't know why I can't handle all of this. Or I don't know why I'm tired all the time. Or I'm just, even when I go to sleep, I'm still kind of tired.
Okay.
That's something that they say a lot.
Same. And I'm trying to see if I want to say it or ask it. Do you all usually tell the client, no, this is burnout, or do you ask a series of questions for them to say, you know what, I'm burnt out?
I think it's definitely a process for me of trying to ask and get a better understanding of what's going on and what they're feeling. Because like you said, I think a lot of times it's just tired. Whenever we talk about the traditional burnout, it's just like tired or exhausted or maybe even overwhelmed. But sometimes the difference with that kind of traditional burnout versus compassion fatigue, whenever it impacts caregivers or therapists, is that they say that we feel like you can feel an increased just overall overwhelmed feeling, lack of empathy or reduced ability to feel that empathy, and feeling overwhelmed by the demands of your role, and a feeling of helplessness reduced to being a caregiver or a provider in that way.
Yeah, and I think from what you were saying before, Sadie's, when your client is like, why can't I handle all of this? I think maybe at that point, I might explicitly say that's what burnout, you're burnt out. I don't think you're expecting yourself to, it's not realistic to expect yourself to be able to handle things that are just simply overwhelming. And I think when you call it out, at least from my hope, from helping a client in that way, it humanizes them in a way of like, you're asking yourself to do something that's not humanly possible. Really.
Have we ever? Go ahead, Mercedes.
No, I was going to say that I think so when I am working with clients, so I've had the opportunity to give a presentation on burnout versus compassion fatigue, because they are really not the same thing. So by the time I feel like clients have come to me, they are operating on fumes. They are already burnt out.
For sure.
We are on the verge of compassion fatigue for a lot of these people that I'm seeing, or even just because I see a lot of people who do direct care as well. So I'm like, this is not a rest issue. Rest is not the antidote to compassion fatigue.
Correct.
At all.
Right.
So I'm like, this is not burnout anymore. You were burnt out, but now we're on the verge of compassion fatigue, and something has to be restructured in your day-to-day. That's the only way to reverse compassion fatigue.
Right.
Not rest.
Oh, I agree. And I want to get deeper into that of like
Okay.
what the antidote is. Do you see anything that are like specific differences? Like, what lets you know that it's not a rest thing and it's something more is needed?
Because they take, when I told you, we were talking recently, and I was telling you how everybody keep taking space. They go isolate and they take the space and they relax, but they come back and you go back. Because when you go take the rest, you come back to the same system.
Yes.
In the same environment. So it's just going to be a hamster wheel of doing the same thing over and over again. So I'm like, okay, the rest was not the answer. You got to restructure something.
You have to restructure something. I agree.
Or change something, or just readjust. Something has to change here. It's hard for people to do, and I want to say that I don't think it's lost on us as therapists that trying to fix burnout and compassion fatigue is not easy because so many
No.
people have demands in their day-to-day life.
Absolutely. Let's talk specifically about us and about therapists, because that's what we're talking about here today.
Okay,
So
talking about us.
tell me about tell me about y'all. Have you? What was your experience? Because I'm not going to ask if we've experienced it because we've all experienced it.
Okay.
So what was your experience, or what has your experience been like with compassion fatigue or burnout?
I
And
would
how
say
did you
at my
know?
previous place of employment, I experienced burnout first, and then I knew that compassion fatigue was going to follow thereafter.
Yep.
And so we always have to remember as therapists that our duty is to do no harm, right?
Correct.
Because if you're experiencing compassion fatigue, you might become neglectful, or you might end up projecting or not being as patient with a client. So
True.
once I realized that I was becoming increasingly overwhelmed with the responsibilities as the mental health professional with clients on my caseload, that's when I just had to decide I needed to take a break, like without the guilt, because the population that I was working with, I was the stability in their life, right? And so because of that, that did lead to the burnout because I had increased responsibility for their stability, if that makes any sense. So I have definitely creeped on compassion fatigue before, but I really had to use self-awareness as my tool to know I got to take a step back in order to be as professional and ethical as possible. Really.
Absolutely.
So that was my experience.
I think that burnout and compassion fatigue are tricky because it have you questioning why you went into the field anyway,
Yeah.
or if you made the right decision to go into this field, you start thinking you're not good at it, or what am I doing with my life? I mean, that has been my experience. But that's when you have to externalize the what I want to call the capitalism or the profitability of mental health, because working at agencies, which is where we kind of all started, it really kind of pushes us to be profit over you, not necessarily profit over people, because they want you to see the people for the profit.
Quantity over quality.
Yeah, so it's like, this is like, okay, forget what you are humanly capable of doing. I need you to push yourself to the brink of
Yes.
exhaustion to get productivity so that we can make these numbers. That is almost always going to lead a therapist to compassion
Burnout,
fatigue.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you making money, but I think I really like what you were saying, Brittany, of the harms of this. Like, what are the dangers of caregivers and providers having compassion fatigue?
Right.
Yeah, and people who care for other people in just even the medical settings. We as
Yes.
therapists, I work with people in the medical field, and when they tell me their shifts, I am almost always alarmed that they are expected to do 12 hours a day, and sometimes they do it back to back to back to back. I don't see how that is.
It's not realistic.
But it's they do it.
Right. It's not realistic. And there's really no truly quality of care.
I was about to say, let's talk specific, though, about the harms that come from that, because I'm sure they are not doing the best possible job that they can be doing under those conditions. I know whenever I worked in the field and I felt kind of burnt out, I wasn't being the best therapist, the best version of myself providing care.
I think the harms to that is like you may miss something. Something important. Overread something, underread something in a client's chart, make a misstep. You know, because they're neglecting their needs. So it's impossible to meet the needs of the people you're serving.
People fall through the cracks, people that are already maybe traditionally falling through the cracks.
Right.
This is how people get maybe overdiagnosed,
Yeah.
over-medicated,
Or under.
or under.
And not properly assessing the need. Or you think that everybody's approach to how to address the need is the same. Especially when you're not considering like
Okay,
cultural
yeah.
aspects.
Yeah.
You're just doing an umbrella approach to
Yes.
Which happens.
you get X, Y, and Z, you get X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
But like half the time they don't even need that. They need something else.
That's
you know?
good.
So
Because what you're saying is like burnout is leading people to do a cookie cutter approach
Correct.
to
Everybody.
serving others.
Yeah.
When really, when you're serving people, you got to be person centered, no matter what you're doing.
Exactly.
And it takes work to be person centered, which means you have to be
So much work.
rested and kind of hydrated and fully prepared to take on each individual differently, and they can't all get the same treatment from you.
Right. I like that you said that because how that translated to me was like you have to be a student of your field.
Oh,
right?
100%.
And
Always.
even with that means you're a student of yourself. What does it look like when I am burnt out as the caregiver or the therapist? Because you
question.
don't want to be compassionately fatigued. Like I don't want that for myself or any of my colleagues or people who are caregivers. So it's just being a student of your field, especially if it's a field that you really love being a part of, I think that leads to not it being a cookie cutter approach, because you know that everybody needs to be person centered, or the approach needs to be person centered, and you as the person providing the service has to know your limit, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful segue into, as a therapist, what are your signs and symptoms of burnout or compassion fatigue, and how do you just practice mindfulness around those?
I will say I was pretty burnt out rather recently. All three of us are entrepreneurs, right? So like that, we're not only having to focus on providing services to our clients who trust us with their stories, but also like there are other responsibilities of being a business owner, right? And so like I think what has been super helpful for me is recognizing when I'm not regulated, or that plus when I'm avoiding certain responsibilities because almost anything is about to tip me over the edge. And I'm overwhelmed. It could be the slightest thing. Okay, I got to go to the grocery store. Never mind, I'm not going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to just buy something to eat. Like, when it's starting to be a domino effect, that's when I'm like, I got to take a couple of days off to really reset, rest. And for me, because I consider myself to be a pretty social person, like, being in community also, like, rejuvenates me.
Okay.
So I think to help with knowing, or to help is knowing what you like to do, or how you like to recalibrate, essentially. Yeah.
I think we've asked that one before, like what brings you back home to yourself and what helps you reset. So I like that.
What brings you back home? That's good.
What about you, Sadie? What lets you know that you might be on the brink of burnout, and how do you practice mindfulness around that so that you don't fully get to that point?
When I do get to that point, so I don't think I don't fully get to the point. I think I get to the point.
Okay.
And what I recognize is most of the times things that I find fun are no longer fun for me. And I'm like, something needs to change, because this used to be so much fun. This is not a PHQ-9 question.
She said, give me the assessment, baby.
No, that is a
Symptom
sign of
of depression,
burnout.
for
When
sure.
things used to be fun, they're not fun anymore. Then
Yes.
something has changed within me that's making this not fun anymore.
Right.
So I think that's a sign for me. You ask for me. When it's not fun anymore, or when I find myself irritated, or like just something that's small that kind of like sends me over the edge. It shouldn't be sending me over the edge.
Like what? I'm just
that.
I'm just trying to give the people a real life example of what these things could look like.
Are you comfortable with sharing? Sister?
I don't know what.
She's asking
Well,
like for
I was
specific.
told that
small
my
things?
patience was thin as paper.
And that sent you over the edge.
No.
Oh.
I'm thinking I do have a patience issue within myself. It is pretty thin. I don't know how I got like this. However, I work on it, and I give myself what I need, and I know what I need.
Right.
Even if people don't understand what I need, and people question what I need, I know what I need, and what I need most of the time is quality sleep. I need nutrient dense foods, and I need some nature and peer support most of the times, until my peers become my triggers, and I have to.
That sounds like violence,
Yeah.
which we do not condone.
But the best thing to keep yourself grounded is to be consistent with the things that you know you
Ooh, that's
need.
good. That's
You have to
good.
be consistent with them.
Yes.
And I think that's to me, that's self-discipline.
Yes.
Right.
And you can't have self-care or self-love without discipline. All of those things go interchangeably to me. This is what I actually address burnout and compassion fatigue with those three pillars that I created myself, with self-care, self-love, and self-discipline, when I'm talking to people about
Self-care, self-love, and self-discipline.
Yes.
How does that look on a day? Because that kind of also segues into this question
Okay.
of how we balance the demands of our professional roles with the needs for personal self-care,
Yes.
especially in emotionally taxing situations. So I like these three pillars. Can you tell us a little bit more about like how you teach them or what that looks like in practice?
Well, I'm just going to make it personal for
Okay,
myself, and then
perfect.
I'll talk about professionally and serving people. So to me, like, self-care would be the daily actions taken to nurture my emotionally, professionally, spiritually, and financial needs.
Okay.
This is my overall well-being. It's the actions I take to make sure that I am considering my overall well-being. Self-love is the belief that I'm even worthy of wellness. Like,
Period. Love that.
the belief that I'm worthy of love, respect, honor, peace, happiness, consideration for my own wellness. I consider that to be self-love
How do you ground yourself in that?
with the daily actions that I take.
Okay, so it's not a conscious thing that you're telling yourself or
Yes.
that you're reading that says, hey, this is a remembrance. Like, I am worthy of this every single day. It's just a subconscious thing.
I would say it's a subconscious thing, but I would also that's just how I define self love, but the self care. So I am a doer, but I also talk to myself as well. So, but to me, that is, but that's what I'm describing as self care, the daily action that I take. I didn't go into detail about the daily actions, but that would also be the affirming myself
Okay.
that I am worthy of love, respect, and consideration for my own wellness,
Okay.
and having autonomy and what that looked like for me. And then self discipline is really just doing all of that stuff consistently, even when you don't want to. Because people think of self care as like, oh, I'm going to get my nails done, but it's more. It's more to it than that. It's also doing the things that you don't want to do, that make you well.
How do you, I agree. And self discipline is super important because we're not always going to be motivated. And that's just, that's just the reality of things.
Such as going to the grocery store when you know you don't want to go to the grocery store. And I don't like going to the grocery store much anymore. I used to love going to the grocery store.
How do you push yourself past that point? Because it's not motivation. No. Do you tell yourself consciously, like, okay, this is discipline, or this is self-care in action? Like, what step do you take, or what's the bridge between I don't want to do this to making yourself do it anyway?
Something you pointed out to me many years ago is that I'm just a disciplined person. I don't think I realized that.
Don't help the people.
Help the people. You asking me how I do it. Discipline is how I do it. So what I would say is that I tell myself that if you don't prepare, then you will fail. This week is going to be a failure. So in order to set this week up for success, then I have to start it on the Sunday night before.
So rationalizing it to the point of like, okay, girl, let's get back on it.
Pretty much. Or let's continue with it, even though I'm tired. Because a lot of time we do use the weekend to like take our foot off the gas. And it's a sticky situation because you do deserve that kind of like that rest and to like ease up a little bit. But also Sunday's coming right back around. Yeah. And if you don't set up the Sunday night for success, to me, it can throw the whole Monday off. Right. Then they can throw the whole Tuesday off. Right. And so on.
I think for me, I do rationalize it, but then it's one of those things. How do I help myself? And I think self-awareness plays a part in getting me back on track. Like, what do I need to help myself to get back on track, really? I know that I need to go to the grocery store. I feel better when I cook for myself. Yep. So how do I get back to... Sometimes we unintentionally neglect ourselves because we're just on go, 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 exactly. Right? So then it's, how do I get back on track? What has it looked like when my mood was consistently good? And what were the things I was doing around that time for it to be consistently good?
But people know the things that they were doing. It's just that they get tired of doing them. Because let's be real, being healthy and taking care of yourself in all areas it can be a little taxing.
It is.
Yes, I was going to say, which is why I encourage my clients flexibility. There is no structure without flexibility, because when we're too rigid, we're contributing to the burnout.
And which is why I was going to say, even whenever you were saying like, just the self-awareness being at the center of it. So Mercedes has the self-awareness of, I know I need these things to have a better week. And so I think I kind of practice the same kind of self-awareness. So it's not just about, I'm going to have a better week if I make myself do it all now. Sometimes for me, it's, you're going to have a better week if you let yourself rest right now, plan to get this done tomorrow at this day or at this time. You can squeeze it in there. But sometimes it does look like intentional rest right now so that I can later be better at these things. Because I could push through and get all of the things done, but that's not going to be the best outcome for me for the week.
So are we also talking about compassion fatigue for ourselves too?
That's the whole purpose of the session, right? Compassion fatigue for ourselves.
Yeah. I was thinking compassion fatigue externally.
Both.
Both.
Yeah. But we kind of going interchangeably, talking about ourselves and for our guests, our clients, or the people we serve. But as a therapist, I think that the biggest thing for me this year, as I try to navigate entrepreneurship and putting my name out there, is kind of like maintaining a healthy balance between the various professional activities that I try to engage in. You have to have a balance there as a therapist. Learning what spaces I need to go in and what spaces I don't need to go in as a mental health professional. And then since this area is kind of a little bit oversaturated these days, just being very careful with taking on more than I need to put my name out there. Because I think maybe earlier this year, I had kind of started just saying yes to everything somebody asked me to do. And then I was like, you know what? I'm actually kind of tired. And just a little tired. So just knowing when to say no, which is really big on
that's
for
big.
therapists.
Yeah.
Tell me why, because that's one of my questions here is like, what are some of the unique self-care and boundary needs for therapists and caregivers that might differ from other professionals? Like you said, as a therapist, this was important for you to not take on every gig. Why do you think it was so different for you or so important for you?
Because I was tired.
Does it impact? I know for me specifically,
And my friend told me, you don't have to say yes to everything. Do you want me to send an email and tell them no?
that was me. I don't mind saying no to people.
I've definitely gotten better at saying
I don't care. I'll be tired.
period.
So specifically for me as a therapist, whenever it comes to like my self-care needs, maybe versus others, but I also think this is part of my personality, because I am more of an introvert, is I have to set more like social boundaries. I don't do a lot of random things. If I do random things, it's usually with people that are like my inner circle. That's like maybe 6 people. Outside of that, I don't like to do a lot of random.
I don't think it's that many.
First off,
It's no business.
6 is a lot for you here in Houston.
2 aren't here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
2 are
You're like, you had 6 in Houston. I'm like,
wait a minute.
okay.
Don't.
She said, "Don't do that."
No, I hear you.
I have friends. But for me, it's important because, like, for Britt, social interactions encourage her, rejuvenate her. They do not do that for me. So I have to be very mindful of how my social life and my life outside of the therapy room impacts my ability to show up in the therapy room and have compassion. If I am constantly being in the middle of people's drama or trying to fix everything, it impacts how I show up in the therapy room because I feel like I am constantly working.
Yes.
And that is not okay
Right.
because now I'm going to be less present,
Yes.
maybe even less empathetic, and my clients don't deserve that. And I don't
Exactly.
deserve that as a therapist because I love what I do.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. What was the question again?
Like, what needs might be different, self-care needs or boundaries for therapists
Okay,
that may differ from other professions?
I see. Okay.
Definitely need
I think
boundaries.
I think it really does go back to what I was saying before is like our duty is to do no harm, right? Because there is a power dynamic from therapist to client, from caregiver to the person who is in need of being cared for. And so like you have to be very mindful and careful of how you're participating in that type of process because it is so delicate. So I think it would be drastically different, though every profession or professional needs a self-care plan. But I think because we are the provider of a person's story or pain or trauma, I think we do have to be mindful of how we participate in that, really. And I would say for a caregiver, because I have a few clients who are caregivers, and I actually had a client recently where she kind of admitted, I would push all this aside to take care of so and so. I said, I love that you love this person, but are you saying to me that you would light yourself on fire to keep others warm? Because that's how it's translating to me. And she was like, damn, actually, now that you said it that way, maybe not. So how do you still extend your care while also still caring for yourself? I think it might be too black and white for people where they feel like they have to totally take away their care. But it's how do you balance the percentage of it while also still caring for yourself, if that makes sense.
I think that is influenced culturally with different people.
100%.
I think that in our culture specifically, I think it's just the ongoing conversation about what Black women used to do. Just speaking about like, I actually seen this on social media. I love looking at people's comments on social media because it's like research and data to me. These are people's opinions about womanhood and how it has evolved over time. And so this guy was saying, it's really social media is a big old research experiment.
It is.
And I'll just be like, this is data.
And when you look at it like that, it's more interesting than it is frustrating.
That's why I'm like, this is just a big research experience,
Right.
research experiment. But this guy was saying, like grandmas used to cook 2 and 3 meals a day for their household and everybody in the community, and they used to do this at the church and do this. What happened to these type of women? And this Black woman said, baby, they died exhausted.
And early.
And early.
The fuck?
What did Ride or Die say?
But listen, what the other sex does not understand is that we as women, when we were growing up with these type of women, I don't know about y'all, but I did see my grandmother doing some of these things. they really were telling you to not do this.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what they don't understand. We didn't just get like, oh, we don't, and they mistake that as black women not wanting to be wives or mothers. That's not what they're saying. They're saying, I ain't about to light myself on fire to keep everybody else warm. And I was recently thinking about, because I was thinking about my own grandmother and how much I loved her and my grandpa. But I'm like, the lady did say stuff to me when wasn't nobody else in the room. Like, get your own money.
And
Take care of yourself.
Generation now.
And I'm like, she
Yes.
did tell me this. I'm like,
Right.
I don't think I ever just thought about it like that. But my grandmother did tell me these type of things. She did tell me to take care of myself. She did tell me to get my own money. She said, go to school. She said, finish school.
See, I got the same message too, and they think that we are being told, "Oh, you don't need no man." I've never been told,
Never
"Do
been
not
told
get
that.
a partner. Do
Thank
not
you.
seek partnership. Do not get a man." I've never been told that. Have I been
Exactly.
told to make sure I can take care of myself? Absolutely, but I've
Yes.
never been told you don't need no man.
But this is the
Exactly.
thing. We have to be honest about the fact that the women that came before us was way more burnt out than we would like to admit.
Oh, of
Yes.
They were
course.
burnt out.
And look at the society that they had at the time. That was their role. We're in a different time now. It is not needed in the same
But
way.
they get validated in that way, and people say they think that that's a badge of honor, or we say that, you know, we love y'all, we appreciate the mamas and the grandmas and all this, and then I feel like some people, maybe some men, think that that is enough. If you say this person held us down, they did it all, you think that that praise is enough, and it's not enough to keep them alive. It's not. You got to do something. You got to help.
Exactly.
I would like people to understand that when a black woman says that they don't want to be strong anymore, or that you can have all the other stuff, that it's not a black woman saying I don't want to be a mother and I don't want to be a wife, but it is a black woman saying I am not in the business of being in a relationship with burnout and compassion fatigue for the rest of my life.
Exactly.
Just to have this American dream of a 2-parent household, that's not gonna work.
No.
It's not gonna work. And then speaking of compassion fatigue and burnout, as a therapist, where I see this the most is with the mothers and the wives who come into therapy and they're saying, I can't do this anymore. So there is a part of compassion fatigue that also ends marriages.
Yes.
That I don't think we talk about.
No, at all. I have certainly shifted my perspective. How can I participate in this as softly as I can? If it doesn't involve softness, and I don't mind a little hard work, but if I am unnecessarily inconvenienced, I don't need to be a part of it. I'm so serious. If I want to be appreciated in my softness in any relationship, because I could I could do all of the things, I could do that, but how can I be as soft as I can be? And if it does not offer that or invite that, I'm not participating.
I don't even mind being inconvenienced. But baby, we gonna be inconvenienced
Unnecessarily.
together. That's
Teamwork.
the thing. Let's be inconvenienced together. I don't
Right.
mind taking inconveniences or doing extra things if I know that I have a partner who is willing to do the same.
Right.
But if I'm the only one that is taking all the hits or taking these responsibilities, what are you doing? You're not
Exactly.
helping. At this point now, you're just another responsibility that I have to tend to.
Agreed.
Right, exactly.
The cost and benefit, baby, it's not adding up.
It's not at
I
all.
can honestly say that I have seen compassion fatigue and burnout in marriages.
Yes.
I have too, and I've seen it in a lot of partners, and they still have a hard time leaving. But it almost every time that I hear about compassion fatigue in relationships, it's usually seeming again like one person is carrying
Yes.
the brunt of the burden of all household and relationship things.
And unfortunately, the one that's carrying all of it feels like a burden and wanting to express how they really feel.
But the way to like dismantle and avoid compassion fatigue and burnout in marriages or relationships specifically is people got to start having proactive conversations about the division of
1000%.
household labor and activities of daily living.
Right.
And stop genderizing said activities of daily living. And that's about the only way to dismantle that once somebody gets married. Now, I do believe that women sometimes get married and they do think they can really do this for a long
Or they
period of
expect that
time.
that's what they're supposed to do.
And so,
And why do I know why?
why? Why do some women think that they can go into a marriage and take on all of the household labor and all of the other labor, the emotional labor of things, and do it over a long period of time without
Because
being burnt
they
out?
have seen, because they're not thinking about burnout. they're normalizing burnout as a part of the process. We've seen mothers and grandmothers do this thing, and the burnout is just a consequence of the inevitable, because my mom was a good mom, my grandma was a good grandma, and this is what it means to be a good wife. This is what it means to be a good mom, and we don't have the people around us, the community, the friends, the partners that say, "Hey, you're a good mom anyways. You're a good mom even if you don't do all of these things."
Exactly.
And so we want to be good.
Yeah, that's their definition of it. It's a
I'm
badge
not
of
in the
honor.
business of being good to everybody else and neglecting myself.
Correct.
However, I would also like to
Facts,
add
period.
that as a couples therapist, I can honestly say that some men have not said, "I don't want to help you." It has sometimes been
Yes,
women who have
yes.
decided
Oh.
that this is what they want to do.
Yes.
Now, have
100%.
these
Yeah.
men sat back and watched their wives do it? Absolutely. But they also saying, "Girl, you didn't say you needed help." And she's saying, "You're supposed to know I need help." And I'm saying,
So the responsibility is on both to communicate.
the responsibility is on a woman to say, "I can't cook and clean. I need help."
I feel like it's mutual responsibility. It's definitely on her to say that she needs help, but it's also a part of, I feel like, do you even fully see your partner if you're not paying attention
Facts.
to some of
That's
these
what I
things?
was
I
gonna
have a
say.
young woman that I'm working with. This could or couldn't be true. I don't know. But her partner came to her and was like, "Hey, do you, when we do move in together, because they're having these proactive conversations,
Yes,
do
proactive
you
conversations.
like, how many times a week are you thinking that you might want to cook for me?" And she's like, "Every day. Then maybe we'll go out on the weekend." And he was like, why do you think that I would want you to do that 5 days a week when we're both out here working and you're tired? Like, I care about you. I want you to be rested too. Maybe we can come up with something like a 2-3 or a 3-4. And I said, this is care.
That is care.
This is
Good man,
consideration. That's a good man, Savannah.
It's a good man, Savannah.
No, that is a good man.
And so, yes, it's a part of their responsibility to say something, but also it's our responsibility to ask questions to our partner,
Right.
to make sure that they are okay, to observe them.
Yes.
And I get
see.
that.
Yes.
If everybody is so sometimes people are approaching these marriages based off the old days, and so the man ain't really. Sometimes the man is not really looking at that because he is focused on what his role is, which he think is to provide.
Right.
And so one of the, I think, the oddest conversations is that men still think that when they know that their wives are also leaving their home to help them with the financial situation as well. So I'm like, we can't keep
Somebody
we
just
can,
said I want a stay-at-home wife. They said you don't make stay-at-home money.
Exactly. And even if you did, I don't mean that you don't have no responsibilities.
being a stay-at-home wife is not an easy job.
It's not, but
It's
they want
not.
them to do stay-home wife duties of cooking and cleaning and taking care of the kids, while they also want them to work a full-time job, which is insane to me.
It is insane. That's actually pretty wild. That's wild.
Okay, we getting off track.
But that's where compassion fatigue comes in and kind of ends marriages.
Yes, but do you want your wife to like you? Do you want to have? Do you like sex?
Exactly.
Because a lot of the women that I see who do have this compassion fatigue, you maybe would not be amazed at how many women I have seen who said that I am exhausted, and at the end of the day, I just want to rest. My partner is mad that I do not want to have sex, and I say I don't blame you. What?
I would say that this is not only a heterosexual issue. This is also an issue in same-sex relationships and marriages.
Oh, for sure. Because nobody's talking. Yeah.
It just amazes me how same-sex marriages pick up heterosexual dynamics all the time.
I mean, because they're human. Everybody's human at the end of the day.
And
And we've all
heterosexuality
been
is
socialized the
the
same way.
majority.
Do you think we're looking for people to carry when we're looking at partnerships, we're
Yep.
not looking at what's my responsibility in
I
being
agree.
loving. We're looking at how we want to be loved, and that's all that we're considering. And we're
Yep.
letting go of the responsibility of what it means to be
Is it love,
loving.
or are we looking to be taken care of?
That too. But I'm saying, we're taking away our responsibility in it. We're
Yeah.
looking at this as help versus you're also here to be a helper,
Yes.
a lover.
This is a 2-person relationship.
But if everybody's looking at it as, yeah, I guess that is, somebody needs ain't gonna get mad if we're looking at it like the way you're describing.
Yeah.
I like the question, and I'm gonna ask it because I don't know if you're gonna get to it.
Go ahead.
How does being a Black woman and therapist influence your approach to self-care?
Well, I'm gonna have to sit on that one for a
Are
second.
there specific cultural or community expectations that impact your self-care practices? We just kind of hit on that a little bit. But I would say, as a Black woman, understanding the strong Black woman trope is how I approach self-care, and how I try to teach my clients that we don't have to live up to this persona of what they think we should be, whether that's femininity or just taking care of things or just kind of like suffering, because we have made suffering like this badge of honor or this milestone for Black women. But I'm slowly seeing Black women take it back. Like they're saying like no, they're literally saying no to a lot of things, and they're saying no confidently, and they're saying like, no, I'm just not gonna do it, and I don't really have to give it an explanation.
Boom.
And I love that for us, and I need Black women to understand that this is a matter of life and death sometimes, because the
times.
strong Black woman syndrome has killed a lot of Black women.
It has.
Has killed
At
a
an
lot of Black
alarming
women.
rate. Really.
I think I came to that conclusion a while back. One, after, again, reading Bell Hooks' Ain't I Woman, Black Women and Feminism. Really just raised my consciousness around what it means to be a Black woman, what people expect of Black women, and led me to be okay with saying, y'all been expecting this. And we suffer from it. We do not get a prize for suffering.
Right.
Ain't no reward for it.
And there were times when I was like, oh, if I just work hard enough, it'll be okay. Or because I can do it, which a lot of Black women do. If I can do it, that means that I should. No, just because I can doesn't mean I should.
Exactly.
And so I think that's a constant thing that I have to say to myself consciously is, yes, I can do it. I can push myself to do almost anything.
But do I want to?
But should I?
Should I and do I want to? Yeah.
No.
That's facts.
And I think that that's important, just for me as an individual and as a therapist, just because I want to. And I'm not going to be the best version of myself for my loved ones or for my clients.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think my thought process is similar to y'all's. And I think I have, even for my clients, but primarily for myself, like, what does self-preservation look like for me? When we fly, the first on the instructions, the safety instructions, they say, put your mask on first before you help somebody else with their mask. And that, even though I don't know if they meant that to apply to life, but like that's how I've had to, especially as the oldest daughter, had to really start to view, I need to prioritize myself, because if I don't, I'm not going to participate in any of my relationships in the way that feels loving, caring, and authentic. Really. So to your point earlier about saying no, I'm still working through it, but if I don't feel up to it, I'm not going to do it. Or if I want to set, it's certainly an ongoing process, because similar to the work that I've helped clients work through, it's how can I still extend my care, but then a reasonable percentage? Because if my cup is empty, I literally have nothing to give. I try to avoid or limit that experience as much as possible. So if I want to rest, I'm going to rest. If I'm putting my phone on Do Not Disturb, I'm not explaining it. I have to put certain parameters in place so I can be good.
I'll just say, how do the people around you usually receive those kind of boundaries? Because those can be hard, but they're also necessary. So how do friends and loved ones usually receive those kind of boundaries?
I've not received much pushback, because fortunately I do have people in my life that care about me. I think for my parents in particular, I've had to explain my phone I think it's being proactive in my communication. My phone is going on Do Not Disturb. If you need anything, call me before 9:30. Or if a conversation is going into a direction that I don't like, I feel like we should end this conversation now. Because I'm going to say something and you are going to say something and I'm not going to be able to unhear it. So how about we just don't? And I'm grateful that I don't know what they go through after I say it. I don't know. But I
don't know what they go through.
I'm serious.
It's not your responsibility to manage what they go
It's
through.
not my responsibility.
That's a
but
big deal.
I think the thing that helps me tremendously is the love doesn't change, right? Like, the love doesn't change despite the fact that I am standing up for myself.
Yes.
You've taught me to do this.
To say that's a secure attachment. A lot of people do not think that the attachment with the people they're setting boundaries with is secure.
Yeah, that's
because
good, yeah.
this is what leads them to take themselves to the point of burnout and compassion fatigue, because they think that something's going to change with the love.
Right.
But I will go on record and say I do not have the type of family where I can get them a prerequisite to my boundaries. I just set them, because I can't tell them don't call me after 9:30, because they gonna still call after 9:30.
So what do you do?
Don't answer the phone.
And how do they receive that?
Oh, they gonna say something, but I'm
you
still
don't
not
care?
answering the phone.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
they don't know what boundaries are, or they don't. I can't go call my mom and say I'm taking some space. She gonna take. I'm like, she don't care.
Your mom is
She
hilarious.
gonna
I
say,
love-
"Girl,
I-
you in Texas? How much space you need?"
She
I
don't
love your
care.
mama.
So
So how do you not have the guilt or shame around? Because a lot of people have guilt and shame around setting those boundaries when people aren't receptive.
I'm gonna be
It's easy
honest.
when they're
I think it's
receptive.
easier because I don't have any children and things like that. Nobody is needing a lot from me. I think it's easier. I think that I'm not gonna call it privilege. I'm gonna call it I made a decision, and as of right now, I
Come on,
don't have
decision.
any children. I think it's harder for people to have boundaries and routine and self care practices when they have a household to manage.
Oh yeah, agreed.
And that's one of the biggest things in the therapy room is just trying to get people to figure out how to manage all of that while still taking care of you. Because why every time things get heavy and chaotic, you the first one that you neglect? That's what I can't get my clients to understand. Why is it you
Right.
that always got to get
Exactly.
to the back while
Exactly.
everybody else go to the front? It don't work
Exactly.
that way in this therapy space, and I'm not going
At
to
all.
continue to lead you that way. We're going to have a conversation and do
I
this
tell my
differently.
clients every time they considering everybody else but themselves. I was like, okay, now what about you?
Yeah.
Because every situation, every encounter, every scenario that you think about somebody or consider someone else, I also need you to consider what your perspective, stance, or feeling is. Like you're gonna always consider yourself, and this needs to become a practice.
But okay, so before we wrap up, like how do we treat burnout and compassion fatigue with our clients who do occupy the roles of caregiver, motherhood, being a wife, all these things? Like, it don't have to be like this grand list of things. People won't do the
No.
smallest things.
I think the wellness wheel is usually my first go-to or activity.
Okay.
Or I'll also ask, like, what is being neglected as a result of you giving yourself to people in this way? On top of, you don't have to change the care. It's just how
No,
you care.
You don't have to change the
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
But you do have to add something into your daily habits to nurture your wellness.
Absolutely.
That can be quality of sleep.
Yes.
That can be hydration. That
Yeah.
can be going outside and get some sunshine.
Exactly.
I
Deep
tell people
breathing.
just acknowledge whenever you feel frustrated. Stop
Right.
almost telling yourself that you don't get to be mad at this, or you don't get to be sad at this, or you don't get to be frustrated. Because then it's going to add all up, and then you're going to be mad because you're going off on the kids.
Yeah.
So acknowledge when things upset you. Go to the bathroom. Take 5 minutes. Cry in the shower. We know women cry in the shower. Or
I think a lot of people cry in the shower, not just women.
it's a safe place.
That's why I be taking so long.
That ain't what you be doing in there. But
How fucking dare you?
First of all,
but that too. That's self-care. Self-care.
listen.
So take 5 minutes. Acknowledge how you feel is what I tell my caregivers.
This girl play all day.
Things that you do anyway in the morning.
I don't even know how to feel.
Listen. Also, you can have what we call a family meeting because communication
Yeah,
is the
that's good.
best thing when trying to manage a household in the day-to-day
Yes.
operations of managing a household. Have a family meeting with your family. I have helped plenty of mothers set up an agenda for the family meeting and try to implement this for their family to do at least once a week. And it goes to just show her telling them, like, I am a little bit tired. I'm gonna need everybody to help me. And so we task everybody get a task each week. And
I like that.
I think it's also I think the first part of that is giving yourself permission to know that you get to take a break and you get to care for yourself.
Yes.
Because every now and then you're like, oh, somebody has the kids or this isn't going on. Oh, what else can I do with this time to give back to other people? Ma'am.
mama bears be different.
I know. And I'd be like, baby, what about you, the individual?
Exactly.
You got to tend to that. Don't just find something else to do. We're always looking to fill in the space to be productive. And I think that goes back to this is how we are worthy. And I would encourage you to read Rest is Resistance because you are worthy even if you rest.
Right.
Rest is Resistance by Tricia Hersey.
So
Really good book.
agreed. Before we wrap up, I want to know what specifically for y'all as therapists do your self-care practices look like, and what advice would you give to new therapists to care for themselves so that they can try to avoid compassion fatigue?
Taking time off.
Okay.
What was my other thing? Definitely the self-care practices like resting and doing something nostalgic, seeking joy. Like y'all know I got into Legos recently. I just bought a charger for my PSP. So your girl's about to be a little gamer girl again.
Oh.
But just knowing like what helps you recalibrate,
Mm-hmm.
really. I would say those would be some of my suggestions.
As a new therapist, I think it's important for you to know that your kind of worth or skill set as a therapist is not always tied to your client's progress.
Yeah, that's good.
I think that's important to know as a new therapist, and then also knowing that you might have to jump around a little bit from job to job, getting experience to kind of find what you like until you find a space that kind of nurtures your mental health as well, and take that into consideration. But for me, it's definitely going to be quality of sleep lately, and it's also been mindful breathing that has been helping me throughout the day in nature walks. I like sunshine, but it's a little too sunshine, a little too much sun. But I like
sunny, shiny.
I like nature walks. I think that's important to me. That's also something I hate to throw this in here, but it's also something I've been having my clients do. They go on walks together and they tap into their senses. I got a husband and wife. I got them doing this, and they talk about what they hear, what they see. It's very grounding for them.
That's beautiful.
But I've
love
been
that.
having my couples do that, and they've been loving it.
That's real cute.
Dr. T.
I love that. For me, I would say, just as a therapist intern, and even now, I would say staffing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Talk to other therapists.
Peer support. Yes.
Peer support. Just because I don't know if it's just me or if every therapist loves this part, but there is just something because you can't get it out anywhere else, and we hold so much space, and it's such a gift to hold that much space, and also it's heavy, and so I think we do have to find a way to get it out, to express and let it flow through you. Even I was telling Mercedes that a few years back I just started the mindful practice of being super present with my clients, but being intentional about like how do I let that energy or those things kind of flow through me so that they don't become stuck in me. Because after sessions, I would feel so heavy. It's almost like everything that I picked up in session, I felt like I was walking out of the sessions still holding on to. And so now, before I even get started, I like to practice daily gratitude. Just simple, I'm grateful for this today. It's been sunsets lately. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. I need to start doing that.
I love practicing gratitude at the start of my day. It's always makes for a good day. But then the practice of letting go at the end of the day, walking out, it's like each client I walk into like a beautiful box, a room. Yes, and so it starts fresh with each one. But then when they leave, they kind of close the door of each of those boxes with them. And so I only am in that space with them when I'm in that space with them. So I get to fully hold it, but then I don't have to take it with me.
Yep.
Ooh, well, you know what? I don't really. I do take it with me sometimes because I be praying for my clients, but I mean, I end up praying. I don't know. They be on my mind.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Okay, I'm like,
I mean, that's still part of the staffing too, but I think just the heaviness of it, how it can stay in my mind without being in my body.
Yes,
I think it's how you carry it.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
because then we getting close to compassion fatigue again too. If you're thinking about them, like
I do be thinking about
and carrying it in your body. Yeah.
I don't think I'm carrying it in my body, but they be crossing my mind.
For sure.
All right. Any last feedbacks you guys got?
Oh, this is productive. I got me some ideas for myself.
This was the purpose of it, friend. All right, go love yourself.
Go love yourself.
Go love yourself.